Welcome, my name's Casey Lapierre, and I want to thank you for inviting me into your home or into your barn so that we may discuss the equine foot. We're going to be doing a dissection today, which will involve the foot from the fetlock joint through the pastern and into the hoof capsule. I'm going to remove the hoof capsule so that we can see the laminar attachment, so that we can see the bone structure. We will see the various ligaments and tendons. We're also going to see the vein, artery, nerve, and the various venous plexus of the foot. I hope that you have seen my video on the theory so that you can relate to the theory and how the structures relate to that theory. So I'm going to start by, I have selected a hoof that has already been marked up. And what I've done here is I have actually marked it up the way we do in the HPT method. I've traced the outline of the junction of the white line to sole. I've also found the widest part of what we call the footprint and marked it. I've gone to the apex of the frog, placed a mark, and at the deep central sulcus and placed a mark and drew a line down the center line of the footprint. Once I established the footprint of the horse, I was able to determine the toe by taking a point halfway between the junction of the white line and the sole and the apex of the frog. This allows me to map in the foot where we may find the coffin bone. We can actually be very accurate in locating the distal border or the bottom of the coffin bone. Here I've marked it on the sole. What you see here are these dots. The dots are actually where I feel the true white line belongs. I've felt for the circumference of the coronary band, and by following that circumference, I have seen on this hoof capsule that the hoof print or the hoof capsule has moved forward approximately that amount. When I turn to the side, you'll see that I put a mark in the heel area up to the coronary band. This is going to be a cut mark where I'm going to cut through the horn or the hoof capsule to the dermal layer so that I remove the hoof capsule without disturbing the dermal layer. It allows me to remove the sole, the frog, and the angle of the bar of the heel in one piece, in the hoof capsule, and a separate piece, without disturbing the dermal layer or the corium of the coronary band. Traditionally, we often make a cut here at the deep collateral groove straight through, which will undermine the corium. We don't want to do that, so I've decided to make these cuts. And I do this on hundreds of dissections and have found it to be extremely successful. What I do want to show you is if you look at this pigment here, it's actually a tubule, and you can see how it moves forward. When I mentioned here that the white line had migrated forward, you can see the distance. If we were to take this line and take it straight down the hoof capsule and then follow the tubule, you can see that the distance here will almost mimic what I determined was here. All right. Well, what I'm going to do first, this has already had the trim. I've applied the HPT method to it. We've created heel purchase. We have the heels as far back as we can get them on this foot. And we have created our toe and heel plane, relieved the outer wall. Now I'm going to do is I'm going to make a cut using a power tool called a roto tool, a roto zip. And it uses a bit that allows me to cut through the horn without undermining the corium. So I'm going to place it into a post vise that I have to my left. I want to do it a little farther out. I'm going to rotate the vise a little bit towards me so that I can get the cut that I want. I'm going to put on some safety glasses, actually some sunglasses that act as safety glasses, so that I can use this power tool without having a problem with getting anything in my eye. We've got a little bit of a breeze, so we're going to have some material here. But what I've done, and I'm going to tip it so you can kind of zoom in on it, and you can see I've gone through the hoof wall into the corium. The corium actually will not be exposed below this point because we have the white line. That tells me the distal border of my internal arch. I'm going to tip it over and I'm going to do the cut on the other side. Okay, now that I've completed these two cuts, I can take it out of the vise. Let me take these sunglasses or these safety glasses off, and I can make the cut to remove the capsule. In order to do that, I have to remove the white line from the two cuts that I made all the way around. I'm going to do that by taking a pair of hoof nippers, and we're going to cut at an angle, approximately 45-degree angle, just outside that line all the way around. That will remove my white line from the hoof capsule. Once the white line is removed, I can remove the sole. Remember, the function of the white line is to join the sole to the hoof wall and to prevent infiltration of foreign material to that dermal layer, or for bacteria to the dermal layer as well. So I'm going to remove the white line so you can see what the white line looks like. We do that at a diagonal cut. If we do this and we're pretty close on the coffin bone, we're usually within about 32nd of an inch, and you can see the amount that I'm cutting here. You would think that you would see an awful lot of blood, but the fact of the matter is I'm cutting the white line, therefore I'm not getting into the dermal layer. One of the reasons that we can use horseshoe nails, though they do not agree with our theory whatsoever, is that we are using the white line and outside of the white line to nail. Now, I didn't go directly to the line for a reason, was I wanted to show you that now as I come back and go straight down at that line, I should catch the edge of the coffin bone. In other words, we can accurately tell where the coffin bone is in the foot. We can accurately tell without the form of an x-ray. So let's just see how close we were. You can see it start to get a little pink right there. Here's our dermal layer. There's the edge of our coffin bone. You can just see what we call the dermal layer, or what will be our terminal papillae. I want you to take a close look. You can see the mark that I made and how close we come to the distal border of the coffin bone. I'm going to continue around until we have exposed that dermal layer all the way around. One of the leading researchers in farriers in the country was Doug Butler. He wrote The Principles of Horseshoeing 2. And one of the problems he said with today's farrier, or with the science today, is that the farrier has difficulty envisioning where the bones are in the horse's foot. With a little bit of practice and a lot of knowledge, we can determine where these bones are, because the corium that produces the outer hoof covers those bones. So if we take a look, what I did was simply map out the growth of the tubules, and it allowed me to be very accurate on the position of the coffin bone in that foot. What I need to do now is cut through the terminal papillae so that I remove the sole in one piece. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it back in the vise, and we're going to peel back the sole. I'm going to use a set of pullers to get under the sole and peel back, and hopefully without too much difficulty, we'll be able to take that sole off. Okay, so I'm going to place this back in the vise so that I can remove the sole. This is simply a pipe vise. It allows for me to put a little bit of pressure on this so that it holds it and don't need anybody else to hold it. I'm going to go for these pullers, shoe pullers, and we're going to put it underneath the sole and literally peel back that sole. And I'm going to try to hold it real still here so we can get a good view of it. And if you look, as I pull it, you should be able to see right in here the papillae that make up the sole and how they're being pulled out. In addition, we're seeing the sensitive frog, and I'm going to continue to remove it now. I'm going to move back a little farther because I have to break the bar and remove it from the coronary band. If you look right here, if you can zoom in where my finger is here, you'll see the terminal papillae here. I'm going to tilt it a little bit so you can see it, and you'll see the protruding fingers. We're going to start to see insensitive lamina, which are these leaflets here. Got a pointer here. We see the leaflets here, which are insensitive lamina. Here are our terminal papillae. Here are the papillae of the sole, which fit into sockets in the sole to produce the tubules of the sole. Here we have the sensitive frog that fits into the frog stay. I'm going to continue to remove this. You can see the firm attachment that we have as it's removed. There we go. And it's removed the frog stay here. And what we see, I'm going to loosen this up and straighten it out a little bit. There we are. We can see our sensitive frog here. Here are our terminal papillae, which rim the entire distal border of the coffin bone. We have the corium that produces our bars and the angle of the bar here. If you look here, we see papillae in the deep collateral groove that produce the outer wall of the bar. The lamina here are our sensitive lamina that go around the entire circumference of the internal arch on both sides. We have papillae that produce our frog here on our sensitive frog. There is some tissue overlaying it. I'm going to put on a pair of rubber gloves so that we can finish this. I'm going to remove the hoof capsule next. So we'll remove the hoof capsule from the coronary band so that you can see the coronary groove in the wall and the coronary band itself. All right, what I've done is I've moved the vise so that you can get a good shot, and as I pull the wall, you can see the papillae, which are right here coming off our coronary band. Here, the hair-like protrusions are our papillae off the coronary band, which run all the way around to the bulbs of the heels and into the sensitive frog. This area back here is where our heel is produced. This is the coronary groove, and you can actually see our lamina coming in right under the coronary groove and where our white line begins. This would be the area of our terminal papillae. So I'm going to roll this around as far as I can on this side. You can see the tight attachment and those papillae being pulled out. And now I'm going to have to roll it over on the other side so that I can remove it from the other side. And there we can see it again, our papillae being removed, being pulled out of the sockets that produce the tubules as we pull off the hoof wall. Now that we've removed the hoof capsule, let's take a look at the hoof capsule itself. As we look at what was removed, the hoof capsule consists of structures that we should be very aware of. The coronary groove, which you saw the papillae being pulled out of. There are microscopic holes, which are where the tubules begin, and they grow the outer wall. Here we see the lamina. These are called the insensitive lamina, or our epidermal layer, which is produced by our dermal layer, and I can see that some of my dermal layer was left on this hoof capsule when I removed it. They fit together. We have a primary lamina and a secondary lamina. If my hand was the primary lamina, my fingers would be the secondary lamina, which gives us about 8 square foot of attachment on the average hoof capsule. Each one of these lamina goes from just below the coronary band to the distal border of the coffin bone, or the bottom of the coffin bone, there we have terminal papillae which produce the white line. The inner wall, which is produced by our secondary lamina, or our dermal layer, produces our epidermal layer, and it bonds or blends with the tubules produced by our terminal papillae to produce the white line. I'm going to take a pair of nippers so that I can cut a cross-section out of this white line. Looking closely at the solar aspect of this cadaver, we can look at the inner sole and see the pockets that the tubules, the papillae fit into that produce the sole here, and the terminal papillae here. And if you look very closely, you'll see that the terminal papillae are much larger in diameter, or the holes for the terminal papillae that produce a much larger tubule. The white line is produced when these terminal papillae produce the tubules that blend with intratubular horn that is produced by the secondary lamina here. So as the lamina produce the intratubular horn, it travels down and blends with the terminal papillae to produce our white line. The white line is located here and joins the sole to the outer wall and is made up of intratubular horn and tubules produced by these terminal papillae. I want to take a look at the bars because there are quite a few theories out there on the bar production and how a bar should be trimmed. Some of the theories actually claim that overgrown bars cause an awful lot of pressure on the corium beneath. These were extremely grown bars. They had been trimmed to the level of the live sole, but they are a very high bar. And as you can see, they are providing support, as in our theory, to provide resistance in the spring or in that hinge so that the energy can be stored in our hoof capsule. So we have our spring. The inner wall acts as part of our shock absorber. And the hinge of the foot, as in the suspension theory of hoof dynamics, this groove or triangle, you will see if you have viewed my tape on theory that we have taken a paper plate and done just that. Cut a triangle out of the paper plate, take and flexed it at the heels, and you can see that the distortion in this hoof capsule is behind the widest part of the foot, allowing for this energy to be stored in the capsule to be used at the time of breakover, and any excess energy is dealt with in the back 2/3 of the foot where we have our soft tissue. A bit more information on the bars. One thing that we have heard many times in the field was that people were concerned with the bars being jammed up inside the hoof capsule or up inside the foot, causing pressure inside the foot on the corium, causing navicular problems. And then as they were trimmed, they would come back very quickly, and people just came to the assumption that they had to have been up inside the foot. Well, I want to take a look at the dermal layer that produces the bars. That area here consists of our papillae that produce the outer wall of the bar and our lamina which produce the inner wall of the bar. Often in the field we hear reference to the bars coming back very quickly and growing out of the foot. What I've found is that in this type of trim that stimulates the papillae, we see a loss of equilibrium between the wall, the outer wall and the inner wall growth, and the outer wall grows and lays over. If left that way, it would break away, and it could, very unlikely, could cause bruising at the seat of the corn, which is this area here, but I have not seen that as prevalent. As far as it causing problems with the navicular area, I think as you see as we progress through this dissection, that it is very unlikely that an overgrown bar creating pressure here or here would create problems with the navicular area. I think the pain that's caused is actually what we would classify as caudal heel pain. Pain in the back 2/3 of the foot. Navicular syndrome that can be dealt with when properly treated. I'm going to go to another cadaver that I have here that I've already moved the hide on so that we can continue our journey inward on this foot of the horse. I wanted you to see how the angle of the bar and the various structures of the hoof capsule will affect how the foot will develop. I'm going to put this one aside and get this hoof capsule off to the side. so that we can bring out a second hoof capsule. Now this hoof capsule has been removed, and I've removed the hide so that we can see the various structures that underlie the hide, so that we can see lateral cartilage, so that we can see how the coronary band attaches to the sensitive frog. We're going to take a look at the circulatory system of the foot as it pertains to the foot below the fetlock joint. And what we're looking at here is the medial palmar vein as it comes out of the venous plexus beneath the coronary band. As we move back or palmar on the foot, we will get to our artery, which is here. So that's our palmar digital artery here. And then the nerve, the palmar digital nerve here. And when a horse is nerved, this is the nerve that's cut and capped. It's a neurectomy to eliminate pain in the foot for navicular disease. This would be the nerve that would be cut in a neurectomy. What I want you to see is how our lateral cartilage and the development of lateral cartilage affects the circulation when the foot begins to stride or contacts the ground. You can see as my thumb takes place of the heel of the hoof and pushes, we actually see the lateral cartilage putting pressure on the vein, artery, and nerve. The shape of this lateral cartilage is extremely important. In Dr. Bowker's studies, we have seen, and I have seen in my studies, that if we do not have a good lateral cartilage, which would consist of a lateral cartilage that comes over the bulbs of the heels, as this one does, you can see I removed a bit more tissue on this side. You can see how it overlaps the bulb of the heel, creating this C shape. Lateral cartilages, I'm going to turn it a little bit so that you can see how these two lateral cartilages come over. And what you see here in the center is our digital cushion. It fills the entire back part of our foot. You can see the action that our hinge has on the lateral cartilages. I'm going to roll over to the other side because I did remove a bit more tissue so that we can see the shape of our lateral cartilage as it comes around the bulb, behind the pastern, across our short pastern, and to what we call the extensor process area on the coffin bone here. This will be our extensor tendon here. So that is all lateral cartilage. And if I were to trace it distally or down the foot, you would see that this lateral cartilage takes up approximately this entire area all the way along the edge of the frog, all the way over the top, around to the front, and down to about this area here. That's all lateral cartilage covered with corium to produce our horn. What's the importance of the coronary band? Is it strictly to produce our outer wall? Well, our studies indicate that's not the case. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a scalpel and I'm going to cut a small area to the coronary band, go under the coronary band. What the coronary band does is acts much like a tourniquet. You can see its attachment here at the sensitive frog and around the entire circumference of the foot. The coronary band is not flexible in any way whatsoever. I'm going to show you that when we take it off in its entirety. There we go. I'm going to try to slip my finger under here. There. What happens when these heels hit the ground, the placement is it puts pressure on the coronary band, creating a tourniquet to the various venous plexus. That shuts the blood off as that foot descends. You can see how as the pastern descends, we get movement, and that tightens the coronary band, shutting the blood off. The pressure is building within the foot. As the pastern comes up, the pressure is released, and the blood under pressure is shot up the leg. What I want to do now is I'm going to remove the coronary band. Okay, I have pretty much removed the coronary band from this cadaver. And what I'm going to do is I want to show you one thing I find very interesting and very important. In my first video on theory, I referenced that there are more tubules at the toe than there are at the heels. One thing I'm going to demonstrate here is, if I can get a hold of it, is that it's extremely tough. I'm going to now continue to remove, but what I'm removing is our sensitive frog. All of the area in the back part of the foot here is digital cushion. It almost looks like a chicken fat. On a healthy foot, it tends to have a bit more fiber to it than we see in this foot. This wasn't the healthiest foot. It wasn't too bad. Okay. The thickness on the sensitive frog, if we zoom in right here, you'll see, lay it here, you can see digital cushion, but you can see the corium that covers the digital cushion. You can see though it is vascular, they are very minute capillaries and blood vessels that run through the digital cushion. But to act as a pump, I think it acts more in the way, as in my theories, to provide resistance as that blood moves from this venous plexus to the next. Not so much acting as a pump, because when this pastern descends, we have the blood being shut off. It's the pressure building that acts as a pump when it's released, or it actually forces the blood up the leg as to opposed to pumping the blood. I'm going to put this aside in a tray, and I want to look a little further at our lateral cartilages here. What I've done is removed the coronary band where it attaches the sensitive frog, and that attachment right there is extremely thin. This is where we see a practice being done that I think is extremely detrimental to the horse's foot. It's called opening cuts, where the hoof capsule and the bars are cut. If the heel comes around, it's opened, clean open, until we see pink almost at the corium here. You can see there's not that much structure here to begin with. The attachment of the coronary band to the lateral cartilage here is extremely thin. As I look at the lateral cartilage, I'm going to come into the back of the foot here, and you can see digital cushion. And I started to remove this digital cushion by going inside our lateral cartilages. Literally trying to get in with my knife. I'm going to go to a smaller knife here so that I can get down inside here and go right inside my lateral cartilage and remove that digital cushion as best I can. All of that digital cushion is protecting the coffin joint. I'm going to swing it around so hopefully you can see up in here when I open it, the cavity inside there. Okay. I'm going to come to the other side and start removing it. I've removed the digital cushion here. I got it in as best I can. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to finish taking it out. There we go. And I'm going to cut that right off. So I've got quite a bit of this digital cushion out. Now we take and combine that with the digital cushion that we have of our sensitive frog, and you can see the massive material that fills the back 2/3 of the foot, providing resistance, allowing, this is the material that if you have seen my video on theory, the basin that has to be filled with a medium to transfer the energy from the hoof capsule through this digital cushion to the lateral cartilages in order to absorb shock. If this digital cushion is poor, doesn't have good fibrocartilage to it, the energies are transmitted up the dorsal hoof wall to the coronary band or to the internal structures beneath the digital cushion in this area here. And we can see the cavity that it filled in the back 2/3 of this foot, an enormous amount of cavity. I'm going to turn it over here so you can get a better view right down in there. Now, what I'm going to do is on one side, I'm going to take and put slices, taking back the lateral cartilage, so you can see how far the lateral cartilage goes forward, a dorsal, on this foot, and how much of it actually makes up. So I'm going to go back to a larger knife. And we're going to begin by taking a simple slice across the lateral cartilage. And you'll be able to see the cross section of the lateral cartilage and how it provides resistance. And we need it to provide that C shape in the back 2/3 of the foot, to contain that energy, to store that energy and release it at breakover. So I'm going to go a little bit more. You'll notice that in the background you hear some birds and crickets. It's because we love to work outdoors. At our workshops, we have anywhere from 10 to 15, usually about 15 people taking the workshop, and they also do dissections. It's not something I recommend you try doing at home, but under supervision at the Institute, you're able to do this so that you can get a better idea as to how the structures of the foot develop. Here you can see all lateral cartilage, and we're just now starting to get to the end of the coffin bone, what we call the palmar process of the coffin bone. Palmar process would be the end of the coffin bone here. This is a young horse that has a very small palmar process. Here is a wild horse that has side bone that is developed from this lateral cartilage. It is calcified and become side bone. So we have the palmar process, and where the lateral cartilage attached became side bone, severe side bone on that particular coffin bone. So I'm going to continue to work back, taking a little bit more as we go. Still haven't, just now getting to the bone as we slice back, so you can see a cross section of how that lateral cartilage is, how the lateral cartilage blends with the foot. Good healthy lateral cartilage on this foot, better than we see on most. I think it's real important that you realize that the back 2/3 of your horse's foot, or at least the back half of it, is literally lateral cartilage. You can see here how that lateral cartilage goes over the top. Our various venous plexuses passing through it. It was all filled in. Look at all of that lateral cartilage. Now, lateral cartilage, like all tissue, the stimulus for its growth is pressure. If we apply the proper amount of pressure to this corium and to this lateral cartilage, we can develop healthy lateral cartilage. If we exceed the amount of pressure that we should be putting on this, that's when we end up with such things as side bone, ring bone in this cartilage. We'd end up with side bone here and around our pastern joint. We would end up with either high or low ring bone. And we're getting right up there, and you can see how I'm starting to go over the top with that lateral cartilage. Nice shot here of that lateral cartilage right there, how thick it is. We're still moving forward. We still have not hit bone. We're just about coming to bone right now. I just hit bone here, but if I continue at an angle over the top, approximately over the top of the bone, you can see that this lateral cartilage goes forward towards the toe and will end at what we call the extensor tendon. So I'm going to try to remove this here from this side. We're going to come right under it, right here. Come down around the cartilage, get under it, take that cartilage off. Now it blends with the bone. It's attached to the bone here at the joint. Removing as much lateral cartilage as we can so you can get an idea as to the size of these cartilages. What I'm doing is, you can see that massive amount of material, which is lateral cartilage, and I'm coming in here and we're going to remove it as best we can. You can see I still have some there, and we're going right around the joint. We're actually going around the coffin bone, removing that cartilage. So that's another part, a massive amount of material. So you can see all the cross sections I took. Unhealthy lateral cartilages tend to be very upright in their positioning. If you were to palpitate over the bulbs of the heels, a healthy lateral cartilage is one that is firm, yet flexible, fairly thick, and lays over for a tight bulb in the foot. This one isn't too bad. It's not one of the better ones that we've seen, but it's not as bad as others. There's bone, bone, bone. So we still have some lateral cartilage here. I'm actually going to cut the sheath here so we can get to our deep flexor tendon. There we go. We'll open that up so you can see our deep flexor tendon inside, cut through the annular ligament and the superficial tendon. There. And we're going to go right down and remove this so you can see the deep flexor tendon as it goes right down. There. See how tough this tendon actually is. I'm going to bring it back up so you can see it. There's our deep flexor tendon, runs over our sesamoids here, and I'm going to cut through it so you can see just how tough and strong that is. Distal to it was our digital cushion. Now we have our deep flexor tendon, and as I go back under my deep flexor tendon, there are actually 3 ligaments here of the pastern. Let's see if I can open this up for you. I'm going to remove it open just a little bit more so you can see it. There are 3 ligaments, suspensory ligaments, beneath the deep flexor tendon that are at the pastern here. There's 3, X, Y, and a V ligament deep beneath the deep flexor tendon. And I'll go this way here so you can see the 3 ligaments there before we get to bone at the pastern bone. So we have 3 suspensory ligaments there. Here I'm removing the deep flexor tendon and we see the navicular bone. We see that within the hoof capsule itself there are 2.5 bones. The coffin bone, the navicular bone, and half of the short pastern. The joint that makes up the coffin joint is the articulating surface of the short pastern, the top or proximal side of the navicular bone, the distal side of the navicular bone, and we have the surface on the coffin bone that the navicular bone rides. So I'm going to remove this, and what I'm doing here is I have a number of ligaments called distal sesamoidan ligaments that hold this joint together. In the application of the HPT method, which I discussed in our trim on the method, you will see that placement of the heel is critical to get proper neurological function of this joint. Pressure is the stimulus for growth. Incorrect pressure is a stimulus for inflammation, as well as a number of other problems that can occur if we don't have correct balance. So, by getting the heels in the correct position, by getting correct breakover, by achieving balance on 4 dimensions, we can achieve balance to the joint, to the internal arch, and maintain good, healthy structure. What I've done is I've cut the majority of the distal sesamoidan ligaments so that we can open the joint up and see the articulating surfaces of the joint itself. You can see where I cut the ligaments from the short pastern, and you can see the articulating surface here on the coffin bone and here on the navicular bone. When they talk about navicular disease, it's a change in the bone here or in the surface of the coffin joint. Often a rough edge or a cyst develops, a spur on the edge of the coffin bone, or the vasculatures that pass through, the blood vessels that pass through the bone become inflamed and open those passages up for navicular disease. This ligament has been cut. I'm going to continue around and cut the ligament from beneath. I've removed the ligaments that hold the navicular bone in place so that we can see all of the articulating surfaces and what makes up our coffin joint and basically our hoof or foot of the horse. What I want to do now is I want to discuss how all this information pertains, how it pertains to you as the horse owner, and the method and applied equine podiatry. There are a number of cadavers I have here that have various pathologies. I want to recommend some means by which we could have rehabilitated those feet. There's some products to deal with hoof infections and some pads, we call them Soulmate therapeutic hoof pads, which help to develop correct pressure to return proper structure. So now that we see the inside of this horse's foot, we understand what structures need to be healthy. I want to introduce Robin Lapierre, who is the co-founder of the International Institute of Equine Podiatry. Robin and I have been fortunate enough to travel pretty much all over the world now, and we get to see a large variety of hoofs and a large variety of horses and the environments they're in. And we found that we sometimes do need to provide the stimulus for to get good healthy structure, and these closed cell foam pads that were developed for us really do meet that need. We now have developed a boot which makes it possible to apply the pad quickly and easily. The pad is simply cut to the foot, placed into the boot, and then the boot is placed on the horse for exercise so that we get the proper stimulus to develop the structures we need. I have a hoof here that I want to bring up. This particular cadaver is a good example of what we see with hoof fungal infection. we see fungal infection and bacterial infection in the frog, which has caused a loss of stability to the back 2/3 of the foot. We get excessive movement. Also, we tend to see very long heels on this foot, which is very common. We see this all over the world. It is believed that this hoof actually has low heels and doesn't grow any heel. That's a common misconception that we see on a hoof with this type of conformation. When in fact, if we were to take this heel at this length and bring it back to the widest part of the frog, the height of the heel would be nearly there. So if we brought it back to where it belonged on the dorsal to palmar plane, you could see how high our heel would actually be. The reason that we have this occurring is because of the way that we're trimming the horse or exercising the horse is causing this hoof capsule to move forward. Well, if we apply the proper stimulus, either in the form of hand walking on asphalt to help move those tubules back, or a pad to help redevelop or help to produce good, healthy frog, we can stimulate the growth we need. One problem with having this hoof infection is that first we have to deal with the hoof infection. If we don't get rid of the infection, obviously we're not going to grow any good structure. Well, one of the products that we use for taking care of these hoof infections is called Clean Trax. What it is actually a hydrochlorous compound that is pH balanced so that it does not kill tissue. In other words, it's a non-necrotizing cleanser. It's a deep penetrating hoof cleanser that actually will kill the spores responsible for the fungus, will kill the bacteria, and take care of that infection. We found that one application of Clean Trax every 6 months pretty much takes care of our problem. It's a wonderful product. It takes about a 45-minute soak per hoof. In order to facilitate the soaking, there is a boot that's been developed. The boot is a heavy-duty vinyl boot that we use. It goes up to the knee, holds a full gallon of solution, which we need with the Clean Trax. It allows for soaking of the boot, and I'm sorry, Robin, for putting that in front of your face. Robin and I have found that this is the most successful product for dealing with hoof infections and fungal infections. We find that this is the most common problem in wet areas. In other words, in the UK, in southeast areas of the United States, wherever we have a lot of rain, such as here in Florida, where we happen to be right now, we tend to see a lot of this fungal infection. So if we could get into a routine of using a product like Clean Trax on a regular basis, once every 6 months, we could probably take care of that problem on most horses. If we understand what proper stimulus is and how we can create it in the environment that we have, we can create a healthy foot. If we understand that structure plus function equals performance, we can gain high performance. That's all it takes. It's applied equine podiatry, understanding and knowledge. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you will enjoy our other videos. Robin and I say thank you for allowing us into your home, and we hope to see you in the future at one of our workshops.